Imagine your own parents staring you down, their voices cold as ice, saying your dying son, clutching his tattered bear from the operating table, isn't welcome at their Thanksgiving table. What kind of family steals your life savings, sends a stranger to stalk your kids, then threatens to take them away, all because you dared to say no? I'm Sarah Coleman, and this is the story of how I fought back against the unthinkable. And won. Hit that subscribe button and help me reach my first 1,000 subscribers. I need your support to keep sharing stories like this. I never thought my own parents would look me in the eye and tell me my kids, especially Ethan, my little warrior with a fragile heart, weren't welcome at their Thanksgiving table. It's the kind of sentence that sounds like it belongs in a bad movie, not my life. But there I was, standing in my cramped kitchen in suburban Ohio, clutching my phone, staring at the screen as if it could somehow undo what I'd just heard. My name is Sarah Coleman, and up until that moment, I'd spent 35 years convincing myself that my family wasn't as broken as it seemed. I was wrong. Thanksgiving had always been sacred to us, or so I thought. Growing up, it was the one day a year, our little house in Cleveland, filled with the smell of roasted turkey, pumpkin pie, and that sweet hint of cinnamon, Mom, Linda Coleman, sprinkled over everything. My kids, Lily and Ethan, lived for it too. Lily, my 7-year-old firecracker, would spend weeks practicing her dance moves to show off for Grandma, her blonde ponytail bouncing as she twirled. And Ethan, God, Ethan, he's only 4, but he's got this quiet spark that lights up any room. Born with a congenital heart defect, he spent half his short life hooked up to monitors, fighting through surgeries with a bravery I can't even fathom. His favorite thing in the world was toddling into Mom and Dad's kitchen, clutching the ratty stuffed bear he got after his last operation, just to sneak a taste of mashed potatoes before dinner. Gammas turkey, he'd chirp, his big blue eyes wide with excitement. I'd promised him we'd go this year. He'd been counting the days. So when my phone buzzed that chilly November afternoon, I picked it up with a smile, expecting Mom to ask what side dish I'd bring. "Hey, honey," she started, her voice unusually light, like she was reading from a script. "We need to talk about Thanksgiving this year." My heart warmed for a second. Maybe she'd finally forgiven me for not being the perfect daughter like my older sister Jessica. "Of course, Mom," I said, already picturing the kids running around their backyard, leaves crunching under their sneakers. "What's the plan?" There was a pause, just long enough to send a shiver down my spine. "Well," she said, clearing her throat, "we're doing things a little differently this year. It's going to be a smaller dinner, just adults, something more intimate." My smile faltered. "Oh," I managed, my mind racing. "So, no kids at all?" Another pause, longer this time, and then her voice dropped, hesitant but firm. "Not exactly." A cold knot twisted in my stomach. "What do you mean?" I pressed, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. Mom sighed, like I was the one putting her out. "Sarah, we love Lily and Ethan, we really do, but they're a lot. Ethan's always running around, and with his condition, it's just, well, it's hard to keep things calm. We think it'd be better if you left them with a sitter this year." My breath caught. Ethan running around? He could barely climb the stairs without tiring out. "So, just my kids?" I asked, my voice tight. "What about Jessica's?" "Jessica?" My 38-year-old sister, the golden child who could do no wrong. Mom hesitated, and that's when I knew. "Jessica and Tom are bringing Noah and Mason," she admitted, almost too casually. "But you know how well-behaved they are, Sarah. They're quieter, more refined. It's easier to have them at the table." The room spun. A wave of heat flushed through me like I'd been slapped. "They're just kids, Mom," I said, barely keeping it together. "Lily's 7. She's loud because she's happy. And Ethan's 4, for God's sake. He's fragile, not wild. He loves you." Mom's tone clipped, irritated now. "We're just trying to have a peaceful evening, Sarah. It's not personal." "Not personal?" I wanted to scream. It was the most personal thing she'd ever said to me. My kids, my heart, weren't good enough for her table, but Jessica's perfect little boys were. Years of favoritism flashed through my mind. The way they'd drive 2 hours for Noah's soccer games but skip Lily's recitals. The extra toys piled under the tree for Mason while Ethan got a single book. And now, this. I opened my mouth to argue, but a loud crash cut me off. My heart stopped. I dropped the phone, Mom's voice still buzzing through the speaker, and ran to the living room. Ethan was sprawled on the floor, his bear slipping from his limp hand, his face pale as chalk. Lily shrieked, "Mommy, he fell!" I scooped him up, his tiny body cold against mine, and checked his pulse. Weak, erratic. "Ethan, baby, stay with me," I whispered, fumbling for my keys. The drive to the ER was a blur. Lily sobbing in the backseat, me praying he'd hold on. The doctor's words hit like a freight train. "It's stress. His heart can't take it. Stress." From hearing me fight with Mom, from knowing, even at 4, that he wasn't wanted. Hours later, I sat by his hospital bed, his chest rising and falling under a thin blanket, machines beeping in the quiet. He looked so small, so breakable. My phone buzzed. Mom again. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I leaned over, kissed his forehead, and made a promise. "No one's ever going to hurt you like this again, buddy. Not them. Not anyone." The sting of their rejection burned hotter than ever, but it was nothing compared to the fire building inside me. They'd crossed a line, one I wasn't coming back from, and they had no idea what was coming next. After that night in the ER, something inside me snapped. I'd spent my whole life bending over backwards to keep the peace with my parents, Linda and Richard Coleman, hoping that if I just tried hard enough, they'd see me the way they saw Jessica. But watching Ethan fight for every breath under those harsh hospital lights, I realized I was done. Done playing the reliable daughter. Done pretending their favoritism didn't cut me to the bone. My kids deserved better, and so did I. So I made a choice. If Ethan and Lily weren't welcome at their Thanksgiving table, then I wasn't either. It started small. When Dad called that weekend asking me to drive over and fix his new smart TV because you're good with tech stuff, Sarah, I let it go to voicemail. His gruff voice crackled through the speaker. "Come on, kiddo, don't be like that." I deleted it. Then Mom texted midweek, all casual, "Honey, can you pick up my prescription? My knees are acting up." I left it unread. For years, I'd been their go-to groceries when they were too busy, errands when they were too tired, hours spent untangling their Wi-Fi because Jessica couldn't be bothered to lift a finger from her perfect life in Cincinnati. I'd always said yes, swallowing the resentment, telling myself it's what family does. But not anymore. The silence from my end must have rattled them because a few days later my mailbox clinked with something heavier than the usual bills. I pulled out a plain envelope, no return address, just my name scrawled in Mom's shaky handwriting. Inside was an old bank statement, yellowed at the edges, dated 5 years back. I frowned. Why would she send this? Then I saw it. A joint account, one I'd set up with them after Dad's knee surgery when money got tight. It was supposed to be temporary, a safety net for emergencies with my savings pooled in there too. Money I'd scraped together from late nights freelancing as an accountant, every cent earmarked for Ethan's next procedure. The balance should have been close to $20,000. But the number staring back at me? $1,342. My hands shook as I scanned the transactions. Withdrawals, big ones, starting 3 years ago. $5,000 here, $3,000 there, all transferred to an account I didn't recognize. Then a name popped up in the memo line. Jessica Harper, my sister. My chest tightened. I grabbed my laptop, cross-referenced dates with my memory. That $5,000 withdrawal? Right around when Jessica bragged about the new SUV she and Tom bought on a whim, the $3,000. Timed perfectly with Noah's tuition for that fancy private school they couldn't stop raving about. They'd drained my money. Money I'd bled for while juggling doctor's appointments and Lily's dance fees to prop up Jessica's golden life. And my parents had signed off on every dime. I called Jessica, my voice trembling with a rage I didn't know I had. "Did you know?" I demanded the second she picked up. "Know what?" she said, her tone dripping with that infuriating calm she always used to make me feel small. The account, Jess. Mom and Dad took my savings, tens of thousands, and handed it to you. Did you know? There was a long pause, the kind that says, more than words ever could. Sarah, she finally sighed, you always make everything so dramatic. They were just helping us out. You've got a good job. You don't need it like we do. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Helping you out? I've been eating ramen to pay Ethan's medical bills while you're driving a Lexus, and they didn't even ask me. She didn't deny it, didn't apologize, just muttered, you're overreacting, and hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, my pulse pounding in my ears. Overreacting? They'd stolen from me, from my kids, to keep Jessica on her pedestal. Every time I'd begged Mom for help with Ethan's copays, she'd said they were stretched thin. Every time I'd skipped a night out to save a buck, they'd been funneling my future into Noah's soccer cleats and Mason's science camp. And Jessica, perfect, untouchable Jessica, had the nerve to act like it was her right. I texted Mom next, my fingers flying over the keys. I found the statement, you took my money for Jessica. I'm done being your bank. No response. Not that I expected one. Linda Coleman didn't do accountability. But the next morning, my phone lit up with a message from Jessica. Mom says you're being difficult about Thanksgiving. Why do you always have to make everything a fight? I stared at the screen, my jaw clenching so hard it hurt. Difficult? They'd robbed me blind, dismissed my dying son as a nuisance, and I was the difficult one? I typed back, slow and deliberate. Difficult? They stole from me to fund your life. Enjoy your perfect Thanksgiving, Jess. I'm out. Then I blocked her number. That afternoon, I sat on the couch with Lily and Ethan, their laughter filling the room as they built a blanket fort. Ethan's color was back, his little hands tugging at the sheets, that bear tucked under his arm. Mommy, are we still going to Grandma's? Lily asked, her voice small. I forced a smile, my heart breaking. No, sweetie, we're having our own party here, just us. She nodded, but Ethan's lip quivered. Alma doesn't want me? He whispered. I pulled him into my lap, kissing his curls. She doesn't deserve you, buddy. We've got each other. That's enough. But it wasn't over. I could feel it in my gut, a storm brewing just out of sight. They'd taken my money, my trust, my kids' innocence, and they weren't going to let go that easy. I'd stopped their cash flow, and people like Linda and Richard don't take kindly to losing control. What I didn't know then was how far they'd go to claw it back, and when that storm hit, it wouldn't just be about money, it'd be about survival. Thanksgiving morning crept in like a quiet rebellion, no frantic rush to pack the kids' overnight bags, no double-checking the cranberry sauce I'd promised to bring. Instead, my little house in Ohio hummed with a strange peace. Lily and Ethan giggling over pancake batter, the smell of maple syrup hanging in the air. I'd told myself this was our new normal, our own holiday carved out from the wreckage of my parents' rejection, but deep down I knew Linda and Richard wouldn't let it go so easily. People who steal from their own daughter don't just shrug when the ATM shuts down. The first crack came mid-morning. My phone rang, Mom's name flashing on the screen. I let it buzz, focusing on Ethan as he smeared syrup on his bear's nose, his laugh a balm to the ache in my chest. But she called again, and again, 3 times in 10 minutes. My ex-husband, used to say I had a 6th sense for trouble. Maybe he was right, because when it rang a 4th time, I swiped to answer, keeping my voice flat. What is it, Mom? Oh, now you pick up, she huffed, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. I suppose you're just sitting there feeling sorry for yourself while we're all here trying to have a nice dinner. I rolled my eyes, leaning against the counter. If you called to gloat, I don't have time. She snorted. That's not why I called. I need to ask you something. I pinched the bridge of my nose, bracing myself. What now? Did you cancel the credit card? She snapped. The room went still, like the air itself held its breath. I turned away from the kids, lowering my voice. What are you talking about? Your father's card, she said, impatience dripping from every word. The one we've been using for groceries, gas, essentials. It was declined this morning at the store. Everyone's staring at us like we're deadbeats. A slow, icy realization slithered up my spine. That wasn't Dad's card. It was mine. Years ago, when he'd been laid up after surgery and their savings ran dry, I'd added them as authorized users on my account just to get him through, just until they were back on their feet. I'd meant to cut them off once things stabilized, but life got busy. Ethan's treatments, Lily's school, my divorce, and I'd forgotten they hadn't. "You mean my credit card?" I said, my voice shaking. A pause, then Mom scoffed. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Sarah. It's just a card. You make decent money. You've never minded helping us out." "Helping them out?" I gripped the phone tighter, heat flooding my face. "Helping you out? You've been using my money for years without asking. I didn't even know." She sighed, long and exaggerated, like I was the unreasonable one. "We raised you, Sarah. The least you can do is support us now." I inhaled sharply, words clawing at my throat. "Are you serious? After telling me Ethan's not good enough for your table? After stealing my savings for Jessica? You expected me to keep paying your bills?" She didn't answer that, just muttered, "You always overreact," and hung up. I stood there, the dial tone buzzing in my ear, my mind racing. They'd been leeching off me. Groceries, gas, probably those weekend getaways they bragged about. While I skipped meals to cover Ethan's meds, and they thought I'd just keep footing the bill. I called my bank right then, canceled the card, and changed every password I had. If they wanted to play dirty, they'd have to find another sucker. That night, though, things got weirder. I was tucking the kids into bed, Lily begging for one more story, Ethan already half asleep with his bear, when I noticed a car parked across the street. Black sedan, headlights off, just sitting there. I squinted through the blinds, a chill prickling my neck. Probably nothing, I told myself. Neighborhood kids sneaking out, maybe. But when I checked an hour later, it was still there. Unease settled in my gut like a stone. The next morning, it was gone until I took the kids outside to play. Lily kicked a soccer ball across the yard while Ethan toddled after her, giggling. Then I saw him, a man in a gray hoodie, leaning against a tree half a block down, staring right at us. My stomach dropped. "Inside now," I barked, scooping Ethan up so fast he yelped. Lily ran after me, wide-eyed. "What's wrong, Mommy?" she asked as I locked the door, my hands trembling. "Just a game," I lied, peering out the window. He was still there, unmoving, his face shadowed. That afternoon, a folded note slid under my door. No knock, no sound, just there when I came back from the kitchen. I unfolded it with shaking fingers. "Pay up or we'll dig deeper." No signature, just those 5 words in jagged black ink. My heart slammed against my ribs. I called Mom, my voice a raw whisper. "Did you send someone to scare us?" She laughed, a brittle, nervous sound. "What are you talking about, Sarah? Your parents." But her denial didn't land right. She sounded off, like she was hiding something. "If this is you," I said, "you've gone too far." I hung up before she could lie again. That night, I installed security cameras, cheap ones from the hardware store, but they'd do. I barely slept, jumping at every creak, checking the footage obsessively. Nothing else happened, not yet. But as I watched Ethan sleep, his chest rising and falling with that faint wheeze, I knew this wasn't over. They'd taken my money, my trust. Now they were coming for my peace. And if they thought I'd cave, they didn't know me at all. I'd fight for my kids with everything I had. What I didn't realize was how dark their next move would be, or how close it had come to breaking us. The days after that creepy note slipped under my door were a blur of vigilance and dread. I kept the kids inside, canceled Lily's dance class, and barely let Ethan out of my sight. Every shadow felt like a threat, every car slowing down our street a potential ambush. I'd cut my parents off, Linda and Richard, financially and emotionally, but it was clear they weren't done with me. They'd taken my money, rejected my kids, and now they'd sent some thug to rattle me. Or so I thought. The cameras caught nothing. No hoodie guy, no more notes. But the silence was worse. It felt like the calm before a storm I couldn't see coming. A week later, the storm hit. I was sorting laundry when the mail thudded through the slot. Among the usual junk was a thick envelope typed and official-looking addressed to Sarah Coleman in bold black letters. My stomach twisted as I tore it open. Inside was a legal document, pages of nonsense about reimbursement for emotional and financial support, and at the bottom, a demand, $80,000. For what? I scanned it, my breath hitching. They'd itemized my childhood, food, clothes, school supplies, even doctor visits from when I was a kid, like I was some kind of investment they expected a return on. It was absurd, unhinged, and so them. Linda and Richard weren't just petty, they were desperate. I was still reeling when I found something else that broke me. In Ethan's room, tucked under his pillow, was a crumpled piece of paper. I unfolded it, and my knees buckled. It was a drawing. A shaky red heart scribbled in crayon with "Dear Grandma and Grandpa, please like me," scrawled across it in his wobbly 4-year-old handwriting. My throat closed up. You must have overheard me crying about the note, the calls, the fight. He'd been carrying this tiny, heartbreaking plea while I was too busy guarding the doors to notice. I sank onto his bed, clutching the paper, tears spilling over. Ethan didn't deserve this. Neither did Lily. They were innocent, and my parents were tearing them apart to get to me. I couldn't let it slide. That afternoon, I bundled the kids into the car, Ethan with his bear, Lily quiet for once, and drove the 2 hours to Cleveland. My hands gripped the wheel so tight my fingers ached. Ethan's drawing burning a hole in my pocket. When I pulled up to their pristine suburban house, Mom opened the door, her face hardening the second she saw me. "Oh, so now you show up," she said, arms crossed. Dad loomed behind her, his smug grin daring me to back down. I didn't. I held up the legal letter, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. "You seriously thought this would work? Charging me for being your kid?" Mom sniffed, unfazed. "It's what's fair, Sarah. We sacrificed a lot for you." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound, and pulled out Ethan's drawing, shoving it into her hands. "Fair? Look at this. Look at what you've done to him." Her eyes flicked down, and for a split second, her mask slipped, her lips trembled, her fingers hesitated. But Dad snatched it from her, crumpling it in his fist. "Don't play the guilt card," he barked. "Pay up or we'll sue, we mean it." I stepped closer, my voice breaking but fierce. "Ethan's fighting to live, every day, every breath, and you're fighting to break him. You're not grandparents. You're monsters." I ripped their stupid letter in half, letting the pieces flutter to their perfect lawn. "Sue me. I dare you." Mom gasped, clutching her chest like I'd slapped her. "You ungrateful." I turned on my heel, cutting her off. "Save it," I snapped, striding back to the car. As I buckled Ethan in, I whispered, "Someone's going to love you better than they ever could, buddy. I promise." He nodded, sleepy and trusting, and I clung to that promise like a lifeline. We drove home in silence, the weight of their cruelty pressing down, but a tiny spark of defiance flickering inside me. Christmas Eve tested that spark. Lily and Ethan were buzzing with excitement, hanging tinsel on our scrappy little tree when the doorbell rang. I froze, peering through the peephole. There they were, Linda and Richard holding a giant, ribbon-wrapped box. I opened the door a crack, arms crossed. "What do you want?" Mom's smile was forced, syrupy. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. This is for the kids." Dad thrust the box at me, his eyes cold. I hesitated, then tore it open, and my heart stopped. Inside was Ethan's old bear, the one from his surgery, the one I'd left at their house months ago. "We donated his toys," Mom chirped, like it was a badge of honor. "Thought it'd teach him gratitude." I clutched the bear, shaking with rage. "You took his comfort, his safety, to look generous. He cried for this every night after that surgery." Dad shrugged. "He's got plenty." I slammed the door in their faces, my chest heaving. I knelt by Ethan, handing him the bear. His eyes lit up, but his voice was small. I thought they didn't want me. I pulled him close, tears burning my eyes. They don't deserve you, baby. We do. That night, we had our own Christmas. Hot cocoa, elf on the TV, Lily dancing around in her pajamas. It was messy, imperfect, and ours. For the first time in weeks, I felt like we might be okay. But the peace didn't last. They'd lost their money, their leverage, their pride, and they weren't done fighting dirty. I'd stood up to them, protected my kids, but I'd underestimated how far they'd go to win. Christmas had been a taunt, a jab to keep me off balance. Their next move would be a full-on attack, one that had threatened to take Ethan away for good. And when it came, I'd need more than defiance to survive it. I'd need a miracle. New Year's Eve was supposed to be a fresh start, a night to shake off the chaos of the past month and step into something better. I had set up a snack table in our little Ohio living room. Chips, pretzels, a bowl of M&Ms Lily and Ethan had already raided twice. The kids darted around in sparkly party hats, counting down the hours to midnight with squeals of excitement. Ethan's cheeks were pink with energy, a rare good day for his heart, and Lily kept begging me to let them stay up late. I was pouring sparkling cider into plastic cups, smiling at their chaos, when a sharp knock rattled the front door. My stomach dropped. Trouble doesn't ring the bell, it pounds. I peeked through the curtains and my blood ran cold. Linda and Richard stood on my porch, flanked by Jessica and a man in a cheap suit, his briefcase gleaming under the porch light. An ambush. I cracked the door, keeping the chain on. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice low. Mom's smile was tight, predatory. "We just want to talk, Sarah." Dad sighed, playing the weary peacemaker. "Enough's enough. Let's fix this before it goes too far." I narrowed my eyes. Too far? What does that even mean? Jessica stepped forward, arms crossed, her perfectly blow-dried hair catching the glow of the street lamp. "Mom and Dad have been talking to a lawyer," she said, her tone clipped. The man in the suit nodded, adjusting his tie. "I'm Mr. Grayson," he interjected. "We're here to discuss a resolution." My pulse hammered. Resolution to what? Mom's eyes gleamed with something dark. "We're worried about the kids, Sarah. You've cut them off from their real family over a silly misunderstanding. That's not fair to them." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "What are you trying to say?" Dad cleared his throat, his voice gravelly. "We've been looking into grandparents' rights. If you keep this up, we'll file, and if we have to prove you're unfit..." He trailed off, letting the threat hang. Mr. Grayson picked it up, smooth as oil. "With Ethan's medical history, a judge might question your stability. Foster care is an option we'd hate to see happen." For a moment, all I could hear was the blood roaring in my ears. Foster care? They'd rip Ethan away, my fragile fighting boy, over their bruised egos? I laughed, loud and unhinged, the sound echoing off the porch. "You're serious? You destroy him to win?" Jessica's face twisted. "You're the one destroying him, Sarah. Locking him away from us." I cut her off, stepping onto the porch, the chain snapping taut behind me. "Locking him away? You rejected him. You stole from me, sent some creep to scare us, and now this? You have no case." Mom's lips pressed thin. "We've done nothing wrong." I pointed at her, my hand trembling. "Nothing wrong? I've got bank records, texts, that damn note. I'll bear you in court. Try me." The lawyer shifted, uneasy, but Dad's face darkened. "You don't want to do this, Sarah." I smiled, cold and sharp. "Oh, I do." I pulled out my phone, holding it up like a weapon. "Think real hard about what you're starting. I've got proof. Every dime you took, every lie you told. Push me, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are." Jessica scoffed, but Mom's eyes flickered with doubt. Before they could regroup, another knock, soft, hesitant, came from behind them. I froze as Grace Miller, my gray-haired neighbor from across the street, stepped into view, clutching a stack of papers. "Sarah," she said, her voice steady, "I couldn't help overhearing. I've got something you might need." She held out the papers. Old bank statements highlighted in yellow. "I found these in my attic. Your mom asked me to store some boxes years ago. They show every transfer to Jessica's account. I'll testify if you need me to. My jaw dropped. Grace, quiet, nosy Grace, had just handed me a lifeline. Linda's face went white, Richard's smugness evaporating. Grace, this isn't your business, he barked, but she didn't flinch. It is when you're threatening a mother and her kids, she shot back. I turned to them, my voice deadly calm. Take your lawyer and go. Happy New Year. I slammed the door, locking it tight, and sank against it, my legs shaking. They didn't knock again. Through the window, I saw them shuffle to their car, Grayson muttering something as they drove off, defeated. For now. The weeks that followed were quiet, too quiet. No calls, no texts, no legal papers in the mail. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it never did. They knew they'd lost. Grace's evidence was a checkmate they couldn't dodge. By spring, the tension started to fade. One sunny afternoon, I sat on the porch, sipping lemonade while Lily and Ethan chased bubbles in the yard. Ethan's laughter rang out, strong and clear, his bear tucked under his arm. He was getting better, slowly but surely, and for the first time in months, I let myself believe we'd made it. Grace wandered over, a tray of cookies in hand. Thought you might like these, she said, settling beside me. I smiled, real and unguarded. You didn't have to save us, you know, she chuckled. Someone had to. You're not alone, Sarah. I watched the kids play, Lily popping bubbles while Ethan tried to catch them, and felt a weight lift. I'd lost a family. Linda, Richard, Jessica. But I'd found something better. Not blood, but choice. People who stayed because they wanted to, not because they wanted something from me. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky gold, Ethan ran up, breathless. Mommy, am I good enough now? He asked, his blue eyes searching mine. I pulled him into my lap, kissing his forehead. You've always been good enough, buddy. Always. He grinned, hugging his bear, and I knew he believed me. We'd fought through rejection, theft, threats, and come out stronger. They'd tried to break us, but we'd won. And that victory, it was ours forever.